Take a little thumbnail photo today. So welcome, everybody, to Brain Tech Support Live. This is where we talk about the troubleshooting issues with our human thought appliances. It can be really useful to approach the brain as an organ or an appliance. And of course, a lot of people might think, well, obviously the brain is an organ. But so often we don't approach it that way. Right? When the brain is bringing up a feeling, a thought, throwing out some terrible, intrusive whatevers, images, thoughts, voices, statements, when there is something that the brain is spinning on, some kind of problem, some kind of wrong thing that came up in our lives, we so often don't treat it as an organ. We don't look at it as just this thing in our bodies making stuff. We conflate ourselves with just that one organ. We attach like labels to ourselves, disorders, all based on stuff that one organ is making. But we don't usually do that to other organs in our bodies. If our stomachs kind of hurt or making noises or are, even when they're working well, literally creating all sorts of shit, we don't identify ourselves with that. We don't base our progress with skills in life around that in the same way we often will the stuff around the stuff that our brains are throwing up. It can really help when it comes to working on mental health and fitness to put the brain on the same level as the stomach or as our guts. Our brains are just trying to digest the world. And when they're trying to digest the world, they may produce a lot of junk. They're going to make noises. They're going to have difficulty processing the world around us, particularly the world we live in right now. And so often we're having to rush through the world, like just shove it into us, like eating a whole bunch of fast food. And so we can expect that the brain is going to have a lot of difficulty consuming so much, processing so much, digesting so much. It makes sense that that wouldn't happen smoothly. Theory is that how do I handle the fear of the worst case scenario for real event OCD? That fear looping 24/7. It's been years nonstop. You see there, one of the things that will get us looping nonstop is trying to prevent whatever the bad thing is. The brain's just trying to do its job. It's just saying, look, this thing that happened could lead to this other thing we don't want. Let's figure out, let's go over it again and again and again to try to prevent that bad thing we don't want. So as you mentioned, the worst case scenario there. It's often the case that when people are going after the worst case scenario, they maybe focus a bit too much on the thing, so in this case, the real event, rather than what they're really afraid of. So if you removed that real event, what is that worst case scenario, that underlying core fear that you're really afraid of happening? What is difficult about accepting that it's going to happen tomorrow. That worst case scenario, like say for instance, because you didn't kind of give any details there. Say for instance, it is a fear that somebody did something terrible in the past, and so they are afraid that everybody's going to hate them because of that. So the fear is, right, I'm gonna be alone, everybody's gonna hate me, I'm not gonna be able to do the things I want to do in my life. So when we're accepting the worst possible scenario, we're quickly looking to end that prevention debate in our heads. So that's spinning. So the brain's like, we got to figure this out to make sure this thing doesn't happen. And then we get to say, brain, that's like already happened. Tomorrow, everywhere in the world, there are going to be billboards with my face on them. There are going to be news programs on every network in every language in the world talking about that thing I did and why nobody should ever talk to me again. So today is the last day I have to interact with people. So I'm going to enjoy that right now. What do I want to give to this person in this shop that I'm going to be in? Because this is the last time I'll ever get to be in a shop. Yeah, like that person probably is going to get locked up. So later today. So even the mundane, kind of boring, average thing they're doing, even if they're doing like random chores around the house, that's the last time they'll ever get to do that. So I'd much rather give my time and energy and attention to living my life for those, that rest of the day, those next few hours, as that opportunity to be myself and live my life, rather than spending it chasing the brain around. Tommy, thanks for dropping by from Slovakia. I hope you're having a good day. Andre said how to go on with living life when we have the desirable urge to solve a thought, even though it's logically unimportant. Yeah, so this even ties in really nicely with what we were just talking about there, when there's some kind of real event and we believe it's going to lead to some really bad thing. It's usually the case. I'd say now doing this, working with people on their adventures for more than 12 years, it's usually the case, it was true in my life too, that most of the compulsions that are creating the problems are, in a person's life, likable. We'll often define the disorders, the struggles, and even compulsions. People say, oh, but it doesn't bother me. Yeah, most of them will not bother you. It's like a mountain. The peak, yeah, we'll name it. We'll be like, that's anxiety disorder peak, and all the stuff up there, that bothers me. Yeah. The stuff on top will trouble you, but the base of the mountain that it is built on is just going to be a whole bunch of very likable compulsions to control things, to get certainty, and we'll see it as necessary. And that's why I like to say it's unreasonable to do healthy things. There's a video on my YouTube channel. If you look up, I think if you just look up OCD and Unreasonable, I think it's called Be Unreasonable. It's from way back. I think it's like from maybe 2013 or something like that. When we cut out these compulsions, it's going to feel unreasonable. And we can really embrace that. Just like we would in physical fitness. If somebody's doing something that's really useful for physical fitness, it's probably kind of ridiculous and unreasonable, like running around the streets of a city at 5 a.m. Yeah, you don't have to do it. The benefits, though, are really enjoyable. And so, yeah, you're going to have that urge to go and do a compulsion. It's going to seem really reasonable. What helped me was often thinking of it as me kind of internally putting up my hands to not touch whatever the brain's holding out. The brain's kind of like in the market, being like, hey, like grab this, buy this. And we're just like, I'm not touching it. I'm not doing that. Yeah, it looks great. It sounds totally reasonable and rational to fix that. And I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be unreasonable. Welcome everybody dropping by. Here, of course, it's morning. So I'm enjoying, I've got some mate. This mate is from Argentina. I was looking for some loose leaf green tea, but I was struggling to find it. So I opted for the mate. Osidibe, thanks for bringing some donuts on by. Velociraptor, welcome. Stefan, it's great to see you. Emil, today is a donut day and an apple pie baking day. All right. Said some hellos. I hope everybody has your donuts, your apple pie, your mate, and your green tea. Let us dive back into the questions. Chimp said, one of the things I struggle with the most is my sleep. I understand not sleeping is just an unwanted experience that I cannot do much about, but at times I feel anger and rage at myself for not sleeping. Yeah, you see there, not sleep is one of those physical experiences that we don't control, that we often love to do tons of controlling compulsions around. And the brain likes to latch onto. It's very common on somebody's journey of recovery. You're almost guaranteed to run into an experience of struggling with sleep and then getting into, well, I've got to control sleep because, oh, like, what about these things that are going to happen if I don't sleep? And then we start to get angry at ourselves. We start to ruminate on it. We start to do like lots of control rituals, like trying to get all sorts of like supplements and avoid things and do special things. And it becomes this whole dance performance to try to pray to the sleep gods to put us to sleep restfully. Of course, the more we do that, the more we struggle with sleep. So the thing I'm always curious about, if anybody brings up issues with sleep, is what they do in their heads during the day. If we are practicing lots of controlling compulsions throughout the day, it's very natural that the brain, because it's a very good, helpful brain, will want to keep doing the things that we have taught it to do during the day. Really relevant to technology and social media too. If we've been like constantly throughout the day, in any moment of pause, grabbing our phone and scrolling, then yeah, it's very difficult at the end of the day to lie down and kind of say to your brain, hey, we're going to do nothing now. Because the brain has learned that when we're doing nothing, we're supposed to be scrolling. We're supposed to be doing something. We're not supposed to be bored. So yeah, whenever everybody, if you're running into issues with sleep, one, it is an uncertainty. So we're going to approach it like any other uncertainty. But also, it really helps to look at what you're doing during the day in periods of pause or calm or slowness. Because if you're antagonistic towards moments of doing nothing during the day, of course, the brain is going to be equally antagonistic towards moments of peace at the end of the day. It doesn't know that that moment when you sit down to rest and lie down to rest, it doesn't know that's different than any other time during the day. So what are you going to teach it during the day so that when you lie down to sleep, the brain understands that it's okay to do nothing? Nina, good day to you too. Said, I wanted to ask, how do I deal with a fear of the future and a feeling that something is wrong and something bad will happen in my relationship? One of the things that can be really helpful to look at on our journeys with mental health is what's called locus of control. And locus of control, We could define it simply as, do I see life happening to me, or do I see myself living and creating life? So the future, do I see it as the thing that's just like going to happen to me, and it's like either it's going to just be this roll of the dice. Either it's going to be lucky and it's good, or it's going to be bad and horrible and tragic and terrible. And it's just going to happen to me. It's helpful, and there's a live stream recording on my YouTube channel where we explored the locus of control, because there's a whole bunch of research looking at it related to mental health. Because typically, when we're struggling, we kick away the locus of control. We see everything happening to us. It's helpful to start to shift that locus of control back to us, to see that we have agency to do things in life. That doesn't mean things have to go well. There could be many challenges in the future. There could be things that happen in your relationship. There could be things that could happen in the world. It's not ridiculous. Looking at the news and things happening in the world right now, it's not at all ridiculous to understand that there will be difficult experiences happening in many places in the world this year. That's not a wild prediction at all. It may sound too, I don't know what the right word would be for that. It may sound still too optimistic. And we can trust ourselves to step into that uncertainty, to those experiences, look at the context in which we find ourselves, connect with the supports, like our community, and give our time and energy to building things we want to see. So that locus of control, shifting it back to, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to build things that support myself, that support my community, that support the people I care about, that align with my values. And so we can all do that as we step into a future that will be hopefully not too similar to Mad Max films. And I'm just gonna scroll down really quickly. Just say, hey, Ash, thank you so much for the really kind and generous donation. That is, your first donation on the live stream. Really thank you for supporting this work and supporting the community. I really appreciate it. I hope you're having a good weekend and a good start to the new year, Ash. Thank you. Let's see here. We'll hop back into the questions. I'm just reading through some of them. Jack is enjoying some summer weather in the UK. Oh, okay. Oh, actually, I was reading your comment backward. Jack, you're not in the UK, you're in Spain. I have been to Spain. I enjoy it. Guardian of Galaxies. Hey, it's good that you're keeping track of multiple galaxies. There's a lot out there. You said, I can feel earthquakes every now and then. I live in constant fear of dying under the rubble of my house when I sleep. Oh, it's very natural that we worry about things. But it sounds like you can see that worry is starting to create a lot of challenges. You mentioned there I can feel earthquakes every now and then. If you're constantly checking for experiences, even if we're constantly checking for physical sensations in our body, but if we're constantly checking for earthquakes, we're going to feel them. The brain's amazing at making whatever physical sensations are going to get us into doing more compulsions. There are, absolutely. So I've been in earthquakes before. I'm often in places where earthquakes are a possibility. I'm in one right now. So what we do is you create a go bag, kind of a bag of things that you would use in the case that there is an earthquake, and you have a plan for it. But then that's where the time and energy in our heads spent on it ends. We don't control what happens in the future. There could be an earthquake, there could be a flood, there could be, a tornado, a hurricane, an alien invasion, a meteor, an industrial accident, and so on. There'd be no end to the disasters we can imagine. Disasters do happen. So we take some steps to prepare for it. And then that's where it ends. And so then that's up to us, because the brain, just like we were talking about earlier, the brain's still going to be presenting this very rational sounding uncertainty that we want to think about. So we'll be like, I want certainty that I'm not going to, die in the rubble while I'm asleep during an earthquake. But we've got to notice that. And again, just like the brain's holding out this thing in the market, we're like, I see that, and I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to pick it up. We congratulate the brain for being really creative. The brain is so creative at thinking of terrible things that could happen, but we don't have to participate in the debate around that. I don't know if you caught it at the start, but it is just an organ, and that is its job. It's just going to be throwing up stuff. Be like, hey, what about this terrible thing? What about this terrible thing? What if we don't sleep? What if we do sleep and there's an earthquake? There'll be no end to what the brain wants to throw up, and we can congratulate it on being so creative. Michael, he said, dating feels like an exception to the do life with any feeling rule. I'm going on a date in 3 hours and feel awful. If I turn up feeling awful, I'm scared I won't turn up with an open heart. So you see it right there. That's actually a really, one of the really common reasons that people will get angry about not sleeping, because I hear this all the time. People get angry that, if I didn't sleep, I won't be myself, or I'll feel bad, and I'll go on a date, or I'll meet somebody and they'll have a bad first impression, and then I will lose something. It is not an exception to the practice of having any feeling while being ourselves. That's precisely why we use things like values. We look at, like, what do I want to give to a person? What do I want to express? I would watch out for imagining things that we can't control, like what you mentioned there of an open heart. I don't know what that means, but it's often the case that we'll come up with something like that, or that the brain will throw it out, and we'll have heard like, you should have an open heart for this reason and that reason and so on. We don't know what that is, and we don't control it. So then it's very natural. We go, oh no, I don't feel perfect. How am I going to get that perfect imaginary thing? And so what if you don't have to get that? Something I'll often suggest to people when they're going on dates is to identify objective actions that you want to practice doing. Because if we're caught up in feelings and we're checking feelings the whole time and trying to control feelings, that is going to take us away from having a great date. So what are actual real actions you want to practice on a date? You can do those actions with any feeling. In fact, we have to learn how to do them. Because even in a relationship, you're not going to have perfect feelings all the time. Sustaining a relationship, starting relationships, it's really key that we explore those practices while having experiences, because We need to learn how to do that while having any internal experience, but also everything around us could also be very not perfect. And we can build relationships and share things with others. The angel share, welcome. Theory said, you seem so content and happy. Well, thank you. Oh, how did you overcome OCD? It seems to get so sticky and slow me down on being happy. Did you ever take medication? No, I never took any medication. You asked how to overcome OCD, and so I think, yeah, really, I think a really key point here, because this came up in something the other day too. I don't struggle with OCD anymore. That is not any kind of marketing or gimmick. It has been more than a decade now. It is there would be nothing you could pay me to get me to go back to doing the compulsions or anything like that that would fuel the OCD again. And so I really understand everybody. It's totally possible to leave it behind. It's totally possible to understand the practice of it. So you don't do it. It's about seeing those practices, the coping and the checking and the controlling that fueled so much struggle. All of the hating and judging on thoughts and experiences. And we don't have to do it. I'll often describe OCD as hitting ourselves in the face with a frying pan. Many of you might have had breakfast today. You might have used a frying pan. You could also use a frying pan for dinner, of course, as well, or lunch. When you had breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or second breakfast, and you used a frying pan, many of you did not slam the frying pan into your face. But you could have, right? It's a totally possible thing you could do, but you understand that doing that would create a lot of pain and suffering, and you'd much rather use the frying pan to make delicious food, hopefully. Some of you may have burned it, that's fine. Getting over OCD, making changes around mental health struggles we've had is like learning to use the frying pan to actually cook things instead of slamming it into your face. Because once you learn that slamming it into your face, doing those compulsions creates so much pain and suffering, why keep doing it? So that's why we cut out the compulsions, and at first the brain will think that's very strange, and it'll actually bring up a lot of anxiety not to do it because we've developed a practice around it, we've developed habits around it, and we even in this weird way get comfort from creating and then solving the pain. So yeah, getting over OCD was about changing how I interacted with experiences, recognizing that the old ways of interacting with experiences created a lot of pain and suffering. And all of those attempts to control, all of the attempts with OCD, right, to control thoughts and control the future and clean the past, they only created more suffering. It's about recognizing that our attempts to control suffering are actually the source of the suffering. And so we can drop that control agenda and give our time and energy to making delicious breakfast. Stefan said, how can I dig into the fear of relapse? Oh, it sounds like digging into a cake. I still find myself when I get caught in my thoughts ruminating on old memories and fearing that I'm going down that path again. There may be a couple of things to look at there, because you mentioned kind of digging into relapse, but then brought up the ruminating on old memories, the fear of going down that path again. The thing I'd be curious about there is what pulls you into ruminating about old memories? So is it the fear? If so, what are you trying to check by going over old memories? What are you trying to get reassurance about? When you notice yourself trying to get that reassurance, right? So that's like hitting ourselves in the face with a frying pan. What do you feel you're losing if you don't pick up the frying pan? If you don't go, I've got to think through that stuff. Because that's probably the loss you're going to work on accepting. And it might be that the brain's going, hey, we got to get reassurance. We're not going to relapse. Let's go do some compulsions to get that reassurance. Going, hey, maybe I will relapse, but I have the skills to cut out compulsions. If I notice myself doing compulsions again, I'm going to recognize that, celebrate that awareness, and give my time and energy to things I'd much rather do in life. So thanks, brain. But yeah, if I relapse, then I trust myself to handle that. And I'm not going to do the compulsions right now. That would actually be practicing that. It's common that we get into checking to make sure we don't relapse, but then we're already back into the checking compulsions. But it's understandable. Humans love checking, right? If you look through so many human spiritual traditions, like religions and so on, so many, and in folklores and mythologies, so many have folk myths, religious stories about somebody who was told not to check, and then they couldn't help themselves and they checked, and then something happens to them, right? Like the story of Lot's wife in the Bible and in the Quran and the Torah, right? So Old Testament, right? In so many religions, she looks back and she gets turned into a pillar of salt. But there's similar myths throughout so many traditions around the world. There's multiple don't look back and check myths in Greek mythology. This is a thing humans have struggled with for a very long time. And it's helpful. That's why it's great we're getting together to talk about not checking here today. Yay! I hope you're doing great as well. You said, I have a lot of fears regarding my studies. How to deal with them? Well, we don't have to deal with fears. If you have a lot of fears about your studies, then yeah, you're afraid about your studies. It's probably understandable, right? Can you notice why you would care about that? In noticing why you care about that, you may notice that you're trying to do a bunch of rituals. Like if you believe, I have to get my studies perfect because my studies are going to control my entire future. And also, it's understandable you're afraid because you've turned your studies into a ritual to control the entire future of the universe. They must be very important. But they may also not control the entire future of the universe. If you drop that attempt to control the entire future of the universe and all of the other parallel universes, maybe it will make less pressure on the studies. But it's okay to notice fear about them too. OCD Bear, I see you just mentioned safety behaviors, which, yeah, in general, you might have been making a comment on something we were talking about there. But yeah, everybody, in general, safety behaviors, just like if we're trying to control the future, safety behaviors, what we see as safety behaviors so often only create more of the problems that we're trying to prevent. Like if we see our studies as controlling the future, so we're like, oh, I've got to get them perfect. Us trying to get our studies perfect makes us so stressed that we're probably then not able to study well. We're interfering with it. We're doing all sorts of compulsions to chase perfection. And that just takes us away from actually doing the things we want to do. So yeah, safety behaviors usually create the opposite. Gilly said, how do you not do a compulsion for health anxiety? It could be a real symptom that needs investigating. Yes, but the compulsion is a 100% for certain damaging behavior. And so if the concern is taking care of health, why choose to do a compulsion that will make mental health worse? Out of the fear of a possibility, only a possibility of something being wrong with health. So it's very much the hitting ourselves in the face with the frying pan because we're worried there might be something wrong in our face. It's going to be really helpful with health to have a proactive plan for taking care of health rather than that reactive, we've got to check, we've got to be certain. So identifying what that proactive plan is, identifying the objective measures, working with healthcare professionals for deciding when, how, and where you're going to access healthcare support to identify if something is an issue. If we are putting that pressure on ourselves to constantly chase certainty, it's very easy to be in a constant kind of like performance of compulsions, and the brain, I don't know if you caught earlier, I mentioned, but it's really great at creating any kind of physical sensation. But like so many things, we do have health and we do want to take care of it. So it can really be beneficial to develop a practice around health that's proactive rather than reactive. And that includes mental health. Stefan said, how can I incorporate working in a healthy way? I feel like I need to do hard things first before I deserve happiness and relaxation. I find myself either overworking and inversely not working at all. Yeah, you see it there. This just like we were just talking about there with safety behaviors, with studying, with work too. If we are approaching it like it has to be this overly intense, I can't rest, I don't deserve relaxation, I don't deserve happiness, the result is we just end up not doing good work. This is one of the reasons I like that metaphor of a garden. So approaching our lives as a garden, you don't go to your garden, you don't plant a seed and then be like, hey, you haven't even made any tomatoes yet. I'm not gonna water you until you make some tomatoes. You don't deserve care. And we understand that that garden is not going to grow if you don't take care of it proactively. You see there, again, how we get reactive. So much of this switch we're making when it comes to taking care of our mental fitness, but we could look at it throughout life, whether it's our work life, it's our relationships, it's our physical health. What we're doing here is making a switch to being proactive and creative versus our approach in the past, which was reactive and subtractive. Trying to avoid bad things, waiting until there's a problem or a disaster to do good things. It's much more effective. And I'm talking about if you want to excel in studies and work and physical fitness and mental fitness, if you want to excel at something, it is far more effective to treat it like a garden. You invest and care for it. You have a practice of caring for it that's not dependent on, did the garden do anything useful for me today? Or do I feel like taking care of the garden? No, you're going to have a practice that's aligned with the best ways to nourish those plants in that garden. You're going to take care of the soil. You're going to look at the context around the garden and make sure it's getting the things it needs. And then it is going to thrive and produce the things that we'll enjoy. But if we take that approach that we're just going to burn out and not nourish ourselves and not care for ourselves, we're just going to be burnt out a lot and not enjoy it very much. Guardian of Galaxies, you have posted the message about earthquakes, the exact same one, multiple times. So it can really help to see that even though you're sharing about this earthquake fear, that compulsion to post the same thing multiple times, even though I already answered it. That is the kind of compulsion that is fueling the issues. And so if it doesn't feel like a compulsion, it feels like necessary to post it again and again, you can learn a lot there about how we kind of participate and even choose to do the compulsions. It's useful to notice that urge, noticing that that feeling, I just have to do this, I just have to get control and certainty, and we don't have to follow along with it. We can give our time and energy to things we actually want to do in life. The angel share. So what do you see as so beneficial about planning out your day on a calendar or day planner? And what are some ways you allow for flexibility? How far in advance do you normally write in that structure? I like to identify values each day for things that are important to me. Sometimes that's scheduling in very particular things. But now there'll also be a lot of flexibility around a structure that I don't necessarily control. So with coaching clients, so they have access to a calendar and we'll book in sessions. So those sessions will already be booked in my calendar. And then so often what I'm doing is looking at the calendar for the day and then looking at the space between coaching sessions. And then, looking at what I value for that day. So there's usually going to be some overarching values. And I say, okay, based on those overarching values that I'm moving towards right now, what's that look like in actions today? What are those objective actions I want to do today? And then sometimes I'll put in specific times when I'll do those. And other times it'll just be that when I have those moments of free time, I'll usually write down what maybe those two or three values are for the day. And so I'll just look at them. I go, oh, okay, like what do I want to do right now? Okay, let's go do that one. Often there is a structure that's already in place for the day. And then I'm using values and then kind of just flexibly doing the things that line up with those. And then of course there could be things that come up in there as well. But I would still have an eye, even as things come up, I'm still using those values to decide, oh, okay, that thing that has come up, is that more important than those values I'd already identified for the day? And yeah, sometimes there might be something, and I'm like, oh, actually, yeah, this thing that has come up is something that I value more. Okay, I didn't realize that was an opportunity today. Okay, I'm not gonna do that other maybe task that I had, I'm gonna go do this instead. George Penzer, welcome. Jimmy, you're just checking for reassurance. Jack, you said, I can deal with most brain stuff quite well, but I'm really struggling with a persistent and severe feeling of hopelessness. It's having a strong negative effect on my life. Would you have any advice on dealing with this? Oh, regards, Leo. Okay, Jack, your name is secretly Leo. I tell you, like you just gave away your secret identity in your comments. So I wouldn't have any specific tip on hopelessness. Like I would just have a lot of questions there. And I'd even be curious about when you ask for a tip for dealing with a feeling of hopelessness, what are you thinking of there? Have you explored what you mean by hopelessness? I guess I would say it that way. Yeah. And so, Leo, if you want to maybe share a bit more on what you mean by that. OCD Bear, thanks so much for the donation. And the donuts, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for stopping by and joining the live stream this weekend after our chat. It's great to see you. I'm just going to roll on down through the chat here really quickly. I don't have any donuts right now this morning. Scott, yeah, putting out Orpheus and Eurydice. One of the Greek myths with some don't look back checking. Adam, welcome. FH, thank you. All right, everybody, welcome, welcome. Grab your donuts. We'll get down to all the questions here momentarily. Ash said, I'm at a stage in life where I need to make a decision about having children. On the one hand, I'd love to be a mother and have a family. On the other hand, bringing children into this uncertain world and with a human brain seems potentially an unkind thing to do. Any advice on how to use values to guide this decision? I value family, but also kindness and not causing suffering. The questions and uncertainties about having kids, it comes up often. One of the things that I always find important to explore, and we could apply this to any kind of uncertainty we're wrestling about with in life, is to look at those things we really care about and look at what we want to create and build. Because we could look at anything, and because we have, and we could look at this as a support group meeting for people with really good brains that are really good at thinking of terrible things that could happen. We're very skilled at thinking of all of the terrible things that could happen. And rightly so, like there's an amazing element here of compassion and understanding that when we think through all the things that could happen, we see all of the suffering that could be part of that. And so we celebrate that. It's wonderful that we can understand that there can be suffering and pain in the world. It also helps to recognize, though, that we will be able to do that with absolutely everything. I even think so many of us probably have had compulsions around food, where we worry about giving somebody food, cooking food for somebody, because we worry that, oh no, well, what if something's wrong with it? What if it poisons them, or they get sick, or I have some contamination on my hands and I transfer to it, and then they get a disease and they spread that to everybody else, and then I start the plague and I'm responsible for that. And we could keep on going. There are so many different ways we can imagine any action as causing suffering. And so likewise, we can do that with thinking about having kids. But like we do with any of these things, we can bring that focus back to values, what we want to create. But also when it comes to raising a family, recognizing where that locus of control is. Again, recognizing that and having an understanding of pain and suffering, having an understanding of how to take care of a human brain. Those are amazing skills to share with others. Something I see a lot in mental health online forums is people talking about not having children because they themselves have struggled with mental illness. And I always find that really unfortunate, because we don't have to be stuck in the same spot with mental illness. We can use our own understanding, our own experience of that, to share with others, so they don't have to go through the same difficulties and experiences. That's one of the reasons I do what I do now. There's no reason that's an inevitability. And so just as we look at what we want to grow and create in general, so too, if we're thinking about the mental health and fitness of family members, yeah, that's not an inevitability. And isn't it amazing that we're aware of things like this, that we're aware of mental health, and that, yeah, if you're sharing that with kids, and if this is, if really for anybody, if you're sharing with your kids, you're, a teacher sharing with students, you are in a workplace sharing with your coworkers or your employees, we have the capacity to share useful skills with other people, useful skills that will help them navigate uncertainty, and that will help them navigate situations that could cause suffering, but that we can share tools with them so those experiences aren't so full of suffering anymore. Yeah. Philip said, what is pure OCD to you? I think you're referring to pure O, what's a term that's intended for people struggling with purely obsessional OCD. And I've been doing, working in mental health communities, particularly around OCD, for like 13-ish years now, 14, 13, I don't know. Counting is difficult when you're this old. I have yet to meet a single person who has purely obsessional OCD. Yep. I've never met somebody who does not have physical compulsions, but they usually, when somebody says they have puro, they'll see the physical external compulsions as necessary and normal and be like, oh, I'm not bothered by those. I'm bothered by these thoughts. So there's both the term, and then there's how would I describe it? There's how the term is used in social media, and then there's, you could say, like what was intended as a clinical definition, but yeah, puro is still just a community label. And so it's more, I find now, used is in the community just to refer to intrusive thoughts. And so I'm fine with that. Like I don't have any attachment to any of these labels, including the OCD label. Because these are just, they've always been social terms. And so as the community uses them, I'm fine with using the term in the way that it makes sense for the community, because it's more about communication. So people typically will use puro just to refer to now just intrusive thoughts they really don't like. And that's more common. Horner, so what if your OCD is literally something that kind of exists, and as soon as you think of it, it comes through in reality, like it manifests in some way and causes actual harm? Yeah, OCD doesn't have to be irrational or unreasonable or unreal. Usually, I would say we're often doing compulsions around things that are real. So yeah, that wouldn't be strange. That, yeah, if for some reason you were thinking like OCD, because yeah, sometimes you'll see people saying online like, oh, you'll know it's OCD, or it won't be like a real fear or something like that. And I wouldn't say that's the case at all. Quite often we are doing compulsions around real things, and we are really doing the compulsions, and the experiences are real, and so on. Yeah, I find it much more important to look at the actions. So how do we want to spend our time and energy in a way that we value, versus getting caught up in trying to label and judge the topic of the obsession. Mm-hmm. How's everybody doing down the chat? I'm gonna scroll down quickly. Make sure everybody's eating their donuts in peace and kindness. Yeah, I see somebody mentioned down below, I'd rather not risk it and don't share food when we were talking about food above. Princey, you just gave birth. Congratulations. I'm just having my morning mate. Does everybody know about the straw? I think the straw is one of the genius. This tea straw is one of the most genius inventions. I'm just pulling it out so you can see how it works. So you see, it's full of these little holes, and I won't tip my glass up because then it will pour all over the table. But you can just put your loose leaf tea in your mug, and then the straw ensures you don't suck up all the leaves, and you can just drink your tea straight out of your mug. You don't have to mess around with tea bags. You don't have to go find, like, even stuff your tea in some kind of tea bag or something like that. But it's also really, it's key for those of us who don't take our tea bag out or like really strong tea, because I don't have to take a tea bag out. I just leave the tea in, and I can just pour more water in later. It's amazing. This straw, a metal straw, is one of the few items that I carry with me. For anybody who doesn't know, I don't live in any particular place. I try to keep it to 2 bags, but usually right now it's 3 bags. So yeah, everything I own fits in 3 bags. That frees me up to move around the world. So I don't keep a lot of things, but a tea straw fits in my bag, no problem. So I'll usually have that with me. If I lost it, I would get another one. The thing is, you can usually only get these tea straws in the south of South America. So it's Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay. For sure, you can find them really easily in grocery stores. But then outside of those 4 countries, it becomes more difficult to find a tea straw. May tea straws spread around the world. If everybody was just drinking more tea instead of doing all of the other stuff people are doing in the world, maybe it would be a more peaceful place. Adam, I hope you're doing well too. Said, when OCD delusions is too much to handle and diffusion isn't happening, despite being mindful, is there any way to reclaim the physical sense of self amidst the storm when sensory motor is overwhelming? So it could help to see that what you just described there, I would approach as the compulsion. If we invent an idea of a physical feeling of self, or that there's some right feeling of self, then it's natural we're checking for wrong feelings and then judging something as not the feeling of self. Whenever anybody's running into sensory motor compulsions, I always like to look at what else do you like to get right. Those sensory motor compulsions are all about judging something as wrong and then chasing some kind of right feeling. But whatever we're feeling right now is the feeling of self. There is no feeling of real or feeling of self. The moment we invent that, we create this belief that there is some non-self feeling. And then we create this battle between us and it, constantly checking to make sure we're not having that wrong non-self feeling, constantly chasing that right self feeling, but neither of those exist. So we end up constantly bouncing back and forth between the compulsions. And we end up always feeling like not ourselves. But what if whatever feeling we're having can be the feeling of self? What if you don't even need to have a feeling of self, but can simply go and be you with any feeling? Lewis said, how do you separate wanting to recover and grow without the compulsive need to fix oneself, especially with all the past negative feedback that pops up? Yeah, I think this is always one of the interesting, what would you call it? It's not really a paradox. One of the interesting, I don't know, things to navigate. It could be useful to think of the garden again. We are going to care for the garden. We are going to want to maybe learn from the experiences this year to make the garden better next year. But we've also got to just enjoy the garden right now and enjoy caring for it, because if we get into that fixing, what starts to happen is it's like we're digging up the garden constantly and be like, oh, it wasn't right and I've got to fix it. And then we're never growing anything. We're never enjoying it. We're always seeing it as a problem. Something that really helped me was to recognize that celebrating myself now and seeing now as a success is actually a far more effective way to improve things. Because if we constantly see ourselves as needing to fix something, it's actually very difficult to kind of bring up that kind of passion for doing things, or just enjoying the practice of doing things, because we're just telling ourselves, this sucks, oh, this is wrong, this is bad. And we're just doing something all the time, especially if we're seeing ourselves as something that sucks and is wrong and is bad all the time. And of course, we're going to be pretty depressed and down on things. We're constantly then seeing ourselves in debt, right? This like, I'm not good enough, I've got to get myself out of debt. But then, we don't have anything to spend. What if we are really successful right now? And we can spend that success on doing more things that we want to do. But there's nothing wrong with where we are and what we're doing right now. What if there's nothing wrong with where you are? And you can add to that and grow. And it doesn't have to be about fixing. Oh, Angel Sherry, welcome. Scott, I see you asked down below about matcha. I am a fan of matcha. Well, so you could put matcha in a cup with the tea straw, but just like the matcha would pass through the straw. But with matcha, right, we wouldn't want to keep out the, I don't know, the little magical green bits. So you could have matcha, but I feel like the experience of drinking matcha through the straw would miss some of the experience of matcha, which is that smoothness and even having the big cup. But you wouldn't need the tea straw then, because you can just drink all of the matcha straight. Well, Lucas, thanks for stopping by. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining the live stream today. I hope you're having a good weekend. Oh, I'm the Blurry. Thanks for watching the videos and the live streams. Oh, I'm the Blurry. I see you asked the question there. What's one thing you remind yourself that dissolves all intrusive thoughts and rumination? But there is not a thing I would do. I would rate the thing I find more useful as having any thought. We wouldn't need to ruminate, but that's the thing. If we're having any thought, then there is no intrusive thought because we're not labeling them as intruders. So any thought can be there. We don't have to dissolve it. We don't have to solve it. But then because we don't have to solve it, there's no need to do the ruminating. So I would say, yeah, so on one hand, there is no thing I would do to dissolve thoughts. But then also, if we can have any thought, that removes the need to fix thoughts and removes the need to practice the rumination compulsion. Rob, do you have any suggestions on how to approach financial anxiety? One of the things I'll often look at with clients is identifying financial values. It seems that when we dig into some of the big fears, people's kind of key fears seem to come down to three things: death, relationships, and resources. So I find, so sometimes we can look at just the general values that we work on are values for life. That's going after our fear of death. If somebody's getting into a relationship, it's really useful for both partners, or however many partners there are in the relationship, to identify a set of values. That's to go after our relationship fears. And then resources is things like finances. And it really helps to identify some clear, objective, actionable financial values that help guide how we're caring for that proactively rather than the reactive approach. So usually we're getting into the financial anxiety because we're just in reactive mode. We're just trying to control things. And that can be understandable. So often people are in precarious financial situations because of the world that we live in. It's understandable we react to that, or we might just be in reaction mode trying to get our head above water. Even then, it still helps to take a step back, identify what are those action values that are going to help me start to build and grow kind of a financial practice that takes care of me. FH, so can you give 2 to 3 examples for values to structure your day? No, like they'd really depend on you. So I can give you an example of values that I would look at. So we're doing one right now. So a value I'll often look at throughout the day is I'm going to share something around mental health supports. I'm looking at how do we make the journey of recovery, the journey of building mental fitness skills easier for people. So that'll often be something I'll identify as a value for the day. And then I look at, okay, what's something I can share? What's something I can give? And then when I've done that, I've met that value. Then another value might be exercise. So I might go, okay, like I've already shared something related to mental health skills. I'm gonna put my phone down now. My phone is just for sharing and giving, so I don't need to be on my phone right now. I'm gonna go then and exercise, because then that's gonna be something else that I value. Or I might go and nourish myself. Taj said, you've said before that you don't focus on your breath when meditating. What is your method of meditating? I like just sitting meditation, or it's also known as silent illumination. So it's the type of meditation that's popular in the Soto Zen tradition. And when we practice just sitting meditation, we just sit. And so following our breath, and so you can think if you're following your breath right now in meditation, what if you saw that as doing a thing? Because you're sitting, potentially, and you're also following your breath. what if you just sat? So these, if we talk about following the breath or following something, it could be somebody might be following a mantra, following music, and just sitting. They are, I might get the terms wrong, because they're also, so when researchers will look at different types of meditation, they'll have object-focused meditation is maybe the term. So that's when we're focused on breathing, and then object-less. So that's what we're doing with just sitting meditation. So we're actually, I describe it as feeling like having my brain sit back. Whereas when it's object-focused meditation, it's like I'm kind of linking my mind to a thing, kind of holding the brain. Okay, we're gonna follow the breath, or we're doing a body scan, we're gonna follow this physical sensation around the body. When we're doing that, we're kind of holding the mind to an experience. And then when we're doing something like just sitting or object-less meditation, it really feels like I'm inviting the brain to sit back down with me. And we don't have to follow anything, because my breath, a sound around us, the feeling of the floor under my feet, etc., those are all things we can experience. But what if we don't have to follow any of them? It can be fun to explore. So Jack, and by Jack I mean Leo, you explain more about the hopelessness. He said here, lacking enjoyment in anything other than drinking alcohol to objectively harmful levels, and persistently ruminating about nonsense instead of living my life. It's tough stuff. It can feel like tough stuff, but it is stuff that many people have experienced and navigated around the world before. It could be really useful to join a support group focused on drinking. Not necessarily to take that on as this kind of like, oh, that's the main focus, but it's going to be very difficult to explore those other experiences in life that you probably want to explore if you're also trying to chase a feeling through drinking. Like there you see one of the challenges we'll get into, regardless of the type of compulsion we're practicing. But if we see it as good to chase after a feeling, we'll usually get into some kind of compulsion to chase that feeling. And soon we don't have other feelings unless we're practicing the compulsion, even when we recognize the compulsion is creating us issues. So yeah, if right now you notice that you feel things when you're drinking to an excessive, dangerous level, is it possible that going after that feeling is not actually useful? And what if you weren't drinking? And two, what if you weren't ruminating? If you weren't doing those things, what kinds of things would you want to do instead? And what would be difficult about not doing those things? AK321, he said, how to resolve couple conflicts and disagreements. What is the basics for improving relationships? Talking to your partner. Lyndon, oh, he said, here's a broad question. How would you define happiness? And do you think it should be something people should seek to achieve? Yeah, I probably, like offhand, I don't have a definition of happiness. It's not something I would think about. I would think of or approach happiness as a practice. I So I wouldn't set it out as a thing for somebody to pursue unless they had a really concrete idea. So actually, they're just using happiness to mean opening a donut shop. Because then we say, okay, well then just go bake donuts in your donut shop, and they'll be like, yeah, that makes me happy. If people try to chase an abstract concept, that tends to seem to create a lot of challenges, and you see it, like it comes up. You've been to our live streams before. You see it come up a lot that if we're chasing some kind of abstract concept that's not definable, it's very easy for our brains to constantly question it and tell us we're not getting it. So yeah, personally, I wouldn't chase after happiness, but I would say, using that garden metaphor again, I would say that I do things that I know are beneficial to the garden of my life. And yeah, like the end result of that is I'm probably going to be happy a lot. But happiness I wouldn't see as being a set of things, because it's really important that we can also kind of bring what we might define as happiness to difficult experiences. That we can bring that kind of feeling or approach or perspective of happiness to things like difficult, painful feelings too. That, because then when we can be happy about having an experience of being a human, that gives us a lot of flexibility. But again, I would say that's about really defining very specific things, like I want to have any thought or feeling. And then, because if I want to have any thought or feeling, and then I'm having some thought or feeling, I can enjoy that. OCD Bear said, I had to hit rock bottom in my life to finally get to the desire to recover from OCD. Have you seen this being the case for most people? It is one of the reasons I started doing what I do now. Because when we learn about these skills, we see, oh, you don't have to hit rock bottom to start proactively taking care of your mental health and fitness. So just like we recognize with physical fitness. So that's why I really like the kind of the term or the concept of mental fitness, because we don't do that as a society for physical fitness. Right? For physical fitness, you can, if you want to go to the gym, you can go to the gym. Nobody's going to stop you at the gym and be like, hey, I don't think you can sign up for a membership here because you don't look like you've hit rock bottom enough. Like, are you having a heart attack? Like, do you really need to exercise if you're not having a heart attack right now? But we take that approach in mental health. In mental health, in many parts of the world, it's very difficult to access treatment and support unless you're in a very, very bad state. We've taken an illness first, a reactive approach to mental health. And there's all sorts of reasons for that. It has to do with stigma and all sorts of like wrong ideas we had about mental health and mental illness for a very long time. But now with where the science, the research is at, there's no reason that we still take that approach. Really, we understand that mental health is much more like physical fitness. Like, there are capacities here we can proactively build. We can work on prevention. And unfortunately, we don't really do that yet. So one of the reasons I started doing what I do now was to make those skills more accessible, but also present them in a way that these are skills we just need to build. This is not about fixing something. Our capacity to experience uncertainty and other unwanted experiences and do the things we value, that is just a capacity like building strength or building endurance. And we can all build those capacities before we hit rock bottom. But people still, because of just how we've kind of really set things up in our society, it's still pretty common that people won't explore mental fitness skills until they hit rock bottom. And so then we just have to hope that if you're going to hit rock bottom, that you bounce. Velociraptor, welcome. I hope you're having a good weekend. Velociraptor, you said, related to making creative human goals, you once mentioned doing creative reading. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on how reading is or can be creative. I don't remember exactly how I was describing it in that moment, but there are a bunch of reading exercises I'll often share. And so I was probably thinking of some of these kind of creative reading exercises. But one of them, just like I would explore with creative writing, that it's really useful to approach creativity. And so if we looked at creative writing, for instance, as a start here, creative writing is something we can do in many different ways. It doesn't have to be super attached to ourselves, where we might think like, oh, I only write about a particular topic. So a fun exercise I like to explore with creative writing is actually writing in different genres or about different topics or with different characters I wouldn't normally write with. So it's, you see, it's creative. We're moving outside of our comfort zone. And so we can do the same with reading. We may have a bunch of ideas about things we like to read and things we don't read, or things, oh, I don't read that because I'm not that kind of person, or I'm not the type of person who likes that. So we want to get into creative reading, also to explore that practice of non-judgment, to explore a practice of being ourselves in situations we may not necessarily associate with ourselves. It can be fun to read genres and books that you just wouldn't normally read. And as you're doing that, notice how the brain like wants to judge things or be like, oh, like even they may be judging the writing because they're like, oh, that I don't like this type of writing. And congratulating the brain, okay, like fine, yeah, like I sure I don't like it, but I can read it. And what can I be curious about here? And so that I would say is one kind of creative reading exercise that just expands and broadens our breadth of understanding of the world, but also seeing that we can be ourselves and read things. We can also do the same exercise with music, like sitting down to listen to music that we don't normally listen to, and just not automatically dismissing it. But we don't have to like it. It's not about changing that, but we can experience it and be curious about it, just like we can have a thought that we may not like, but that can be there and we can experience. Prajwal, I see you sharing about intrusive thoughts and the fear, right? It's very common that people have a fear of, oh no, I might act on intrusive thoughts. And you mentioned one where you did a compulsion there. So it could be really useful to take that step back from the thoughts and look at compulsions. We can make changes. We don't have to be checking on thoughts. It's likely that there's lots of other ways you're doing checking compulsions in your life. And so, yeah, if you're struggling to understand how to cut out compulsions, connecting with a skilled professional to learn about compulsions, learn about cutting them out and why that's useful, that can be a helpful thing to do, a helpful support to have. Oh, Kimberly, thanks for sharing. Oh, Kimberly, also thank you for the donation. That's very kind of you to say. Oh no, thank you for your consistent support and being here and supporting the live stream so often. I really appreciate it. Yay, US. Are you a minimalist? I don't I like a minimalist isn't like I don't go around thinking of myself as a minimalist. Maybe because I do like some plain donuts, but I feel like a lot of the donuts I liked are pretty maximalist. But I do like a lot of things. Like I know there's actually a whole there's I don't know if people know about this. I've just tangentially like heard of it and seen stuff. There's an entire like section of YouTube and social media devoted to minimalism. And there's like big minimalist podcasts where they encourage you to buy stuff. And yeah, which yeah, makes no sense. And so I think the differences between social media minimalism and what I do is that I actually do it versus like kind of some of the social media stuff is just performative. I would say so. Yeah, it's really enjoyable to have less stuff. Like it's amazing that like I can pack up my entire life in 20 minutes. I've timed it. Is a really great. Yeah, is just I like, enjoy it so much. And so yeah, I don't like ever think of myself as a minimalist, but probably by by how that term would get defined, I do things pretty minimally. I like going to meditation retreats, and things are pretty minimal there. Jack slash Leo, as you said, would like to go to South America, but have a lot of assumptions about it. Yeah, maybe based on media perception. Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of South America and just nature, food, culture, people. It's yeah, the amazing. So I would highly, you know, if it's possible, if that's a thing you're looking to explore, an absolutely wonderful part of our beautiful planet. Mhm. Rex, he said, why can OCD sometimes manifest in physical? Mm. And then is it like switch, like flicking a light switch? So just notice, we do that. So it can really help to see, like, notice how you describe it as OCD manifests in physical things like flicking a light switch, but that's you, right? We do the compulsion. So yeah, in many ways, it can help to, right, even set aside OCD and just see there is us, and we get to spend time and energy. So yeah, how do you want to spend your time and energy? Velociraptor said, I'm still exploring mindfulness versus mindlessness. You have mentioned doing things like reading while eating. Yeah, how do you incorporate mindfulness here? Is it about shifting focus back and forth? Yeah, so sometimes, so yeah, if I'm doing something like reading while eating, I wouldn't define that as mindfulness. I would say there, yeah, not being mindful. Uh, there are very intentional times where I'll sit down, and so I'll tell you how I'll do it. I'll notice like if I'm about to eat, and I actually notice, oh, like I notice kind of like an urge pop up to like, or like go and read something, watch something, do something while I'm eating. Then I'll go, oh, okay, like I'm just going to sit down and eat. I'll read and eat as an intentional thing where maybe there is something I really want to read. And I have seen like, oh, okay, like the time I have today to read that, uh, there isn't any time today to read that. So you know what? I want to go and read that. Well, I eat today. Yeah, I wouldn't see that as a like a jumping back and forth of mindfulness. No, like I'm just going to be reading and eating and yeah, doing both. If I'm practicing mindfulness, I would just do one thing. And so, and there's many opportunities throughout the day where I'll just do one thing. But sometimes we'll do two things. Oh, Ash, I hope you rest well. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for the donation and sharing with everybody. The angel share. So, can you speak to the idea of at a certain point ditching recovery? Yeah, and the certain point could be right now for everybody. We could all officially graduate from recovery. And then we get to drop that fixing. Like I believe Lewis was asking about it earlier, where we say, look, okay, we're not fixing a thing, we're not solving a thing. We can celebrate where we are right now, and we can add and grow on that. If we are always chasing after recovery, that often becomes the compulsion. Trying to get this clean recovery, like Stefan was talking about earlier, where we get kind of like afraid of relapse. Because if we're trying to hold this special magic recovery too, like I've got to keep it perfect. Oh no, I can't do any compulsions. But then we start checking for the bad things, and we start trying to control the perfect clean thing. So it's almost necessary to drop that. I used to always describe it as a crystal piss pot. Like we become so afraid of, oh, I'm gonna drop it and it's gonna spray all sorts of terrible things everywhere, and then it consumes a lot of our time and energy. But stepping away, seeing that, yeah, there's not something I'm trying to fix, there's not something I'm trying to chase, there's just ways that I love spending my time and energy in life. And I don't have to see that as fixing or preventing some kind of problem. They're just how I like to live. And I would say it's the kind of the quirk of that, or the irony that I now could see over the years, that's probably been one of the most helpful supports with not relapsing. Is that, like, it's not this thing I'm trying to prevent, it's just I like living my life, and here are the ways I'm going to live it. So again, thinking about the frying pan, where we don't see ourselves as having recovered from smashing the frying pan into our face. We just go in the kitchen and we use the frying pan in a way that's useful. So we can all do that with our mental health too. Velociraptor said, I'm pretty familiar with your journey of doing a blog, videos, and a book. You've also mentioned doing a peer support and running a charity. Can you talk about that part of your journey? How would you recommend for someone to get started with doing peer support in person? Would it just come down to seeing what is in my area, or starting something myself? Yeah, for a bit when I was in Toronto, I ran a peer support group charity that had been around for many decades. So it had started as a kind of classic charity around peer support groups in, I think, late 70s, like just at the start of the 80s, maybe. I can't remember exactly now. Where you didn't have the internet. And so you had these charities, there was a network of charities all over North America, and they would have these massive binders of support groups in an area, or you could call in, and you would call in and you would say, hey, like I'm struggling with whatever, I'm looking for a support group. Or you could go in and you could go through these huge binders and find support groups in the area, and then they would also train support groups. And then it had evolved over the years. We still had many of the binders as kind of an artifact, but of course there was then a website or a database and so on. And we'd train people in organizing support groups, and then also do some ourselves. I found, so that was kind of a bridge between working just in business strategy and then just working full time in mental health. I now much more of the support group work happens online. It can be really enjoyable to connect with support groups in person. That absolutely, yeah, you can see what's in your area because sometimes there are support groups to connect with in your area. I find that doing support online can be an effective way to reach more people because it can be very difficult to have the time to go like travel to a support group in person. But also, if we're doing support around really particular skills, especially kind of if we're talking about things like mental fitness and maybe a lot of the skills I know that you're very familiar with, doing them online tends to reach the people who are most interested in those particular skills because maybe there is only one person in each community, but then when we come together online it can be a much larger community. I encourage people as they're starting to explore peer support and supporting others on their mental health journey to approach it like cooking. We are uh, kind of exploring how to be chefs. And so the way that we do that is we start to cook and we share that with others. And so finding that way that you can start to share that with others can be a great place to start. And the like doing that online on social media can be a really easy to access way to do that. Like doing like exploring what's possible with the mental fitness Discord server, supporting people there. There are many online support groups and things like that. But then also, one of the reasons that I moved away from doing the charity is because I had great insight into the stats for the charity and for other charities, because this charity was had funding from the United Way. And so when you're kind of part of the umbrella of the United Way organizations, you get a lot of insight into all the stats and other charities. And I knew the stats from what I was doing online. And the thing was, I was reaching more people just from what I was doing online. And that was, I mean, I had a much smaller, was supporting a much smaller community at that time. And it was a lot more. It was reaching significantly more people than many of the charities were that were also, yeah, like using a large amount of funding as well. And so I get really excited about the potential for sharing supports online. So yeah, if you want to explore peer support, doing something online and just starting to share that and give, I find is a great way to explore it. I look forward to seeing what you explore. Like, always feel free to share any questions as you're taking steps into that. Hi, welcome. Susan, can you validate us on how much the recovery process sucks? I can give validation. It's a wild time. It is like the most challenging things we will ever do. But it's so useful. It's so useful to learn how to have a human brain. It's a pretty wild ride having it though. Oh, Velociraptor, you're welcome. Angel Show, you're welcome as well. Thanks for sharing today. The recovery journey is pretty, making changes. I would say just for humans, making changes is such a wildly challenging experience, right? Just doing something different brings up so many emotions for humans. So that's why I made that kind of switch from working in business strategy and innovation to working just in mental health. But the business strategy and innovation, we would be talking to companies about how difficult it would be for everybody working there to make a change, because they would often have hit rock bottom, realized they needed to do things differently, but then it's the exact same for experience as a person running into challenges and then saying, okay, you're going to do things differently now. And that's really difficult for all humans. So it's especially difficult when we have our wonderfully unique flavors of intrusive thoughts that are telling us all sorts of terrible things are going to happen if we do different things. Mr. Mitchell 100, you have a 3-part message. You said, I work a job where I at times have to cashier. Sometimes I get panic attacks, which is fine. But a problem I encounter is that I can't see, and that makes it difficult to handle money. Any tips on how to continue working effectively when I'm experiencing such a disconnect at the same time as raising thoughts? I try to shift my focus to what I'm physically doing, but I can't see, even though I can. So I would be much more curious about the broader picture. This sounds to me like focusing in on a symptom and trying to address a symptom. So again, like if we've been hitting ourselves in the face with a frying pan, it probably hurts. Maybe our nose is bleeding and so on. And we go like, I can't see, I can't focus when my face is all smashed up. That's understandable. And so you guys could be like, hey, can you just give me some painkillers or something? How do I take care of the pain in my face? That is understandable. Like, I can understand why you'd want to make sure you can see the money. And it could be anything. But when we're in panic attack mode, that can be very challenging. But I'd be way more curious about everything else that is leading into this. That is probably going to be the useful area to make changes. Oh, Jack, thanks a lot. I'm glad you're finding these things useful. All the best as you're exploring some changes. I mean, you said, is constant comparison with others and desiring a lot comes under mental illness or intrusive thoughts? Oh, so I wouldn't worry. Yeah, you could use any. I'm not big on labels. You can call them anything you want. I'd look instead at that rather than comparing to other people and like chasing after all that stuff. What would you rather do with your time and energy in life? Because you don't have to give it any label. You can just be like, I don't have to do that stuff. There's other things I'd rather do. You can do the other things. You said, I have an urge to go to the bathroom frequently, even though I may not need to. What practices I need to incorporate to overcome those urges? This is really common. A lot of people run into this. I ran into this. I used to have all sorts of things too. I'd be like, I have to go to the bathroom before doing whatever because, what if something bad happens? And then I would feel like I had to, and then I would go, and then I would be like, okay, oh no, now I feel like I have to go again, but then I wouldn't have to. It's a great way to see how the brain is so skilled at giving us 100% real feeling physical sensations that are not real. So there's that. We learn that pretty quickly with this because it feels 100% real. It helped me to just start to risk it. So I would feel it, go like, I gotta go, or bad things are gonna happen. And I would just say, oh, I guess, yeah, I'll probably pee my pants in front of this presentation, but I'm just going to go do the presentation. In it, I also recognized that there was a sense of like, I can't control things around me, right? Because there was also that sense of, or maybe I'll describe it this way, like if I'm going to give a presentation or if I'm going to meet people, why did I believe I couldn't stop things and say, hey, everybody, I really need to use the toilet. Just hold on here, I'll be back. But I was so worried about what other people would think that I was constantly trying to control everything on my body to try to minimize anything that could be perceived as wrong from somebody else. So it also helped in exploring this to see that it wasn't just about physical sensations. Often it's about trying to control some other thing, possibly other people. And so it was part of making changes around the compulsions around social anxiety. But also starting to recognize like I could ask for things. I could take up space if I had to. Yay. Said, how do you go about not needing things? Consumerism seems so big these days. Well, I mean, yeah, everybody can, buy a tea straw now. I wouldn't say I don't need things. I enjoy my tea straw very much, but I don't like. It doesn't even come up. The reality is, we don't need a lot of things to enjoy our lives, to connect with other people, to have an impact in the world, to do things we care about. We really don't need a lot of other stuff. A lot of the times we're chasing other stuff to as a compulsion to like get some feelings for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't, and that's why I don't see myself as like some kind of uniquely, really, like in my experience, I don't see myself as a minimalist because I like all sorts of things that I have and I enjoy them. But yeah, I think objectively, if somebody looked at how much stuff I have, it's probably very little compared to even the amount of stuff I used to have. But it's very purposeful. It's intentional. It's very focused on the things I care about. And so I would just say it's about aligning how we spend our resources in the world, how we consume resources in the world, aligning that with our values. And when we do that, yeah, we'll probably notice we don't waste as much stuff and we don't consume as much stuff. AK321, you have asked the question again, now with capitals. You said, what is acceptance? What do we actually accept? And acceptance would be noticing that urge to check on acceptance, and instead of asking the question again, having that uncertainty be there. FH said, are you still planning to release the fiction book you started? There are fiction projects underway. I was doing a bunch of work on a fiction project yesterday, and I'm going to do that today, in addition to studying Spanish. But that's all I'll say right now for fiction projects. I am enjoying writing a lot of fiction, but that's all I have to say at the moment. But know that it is good and going well, but there are some covert top secret fiction projects underway. Yay. So what can be some values for studying? I would look at something objective, not getting caught up in like trying to get some, like clarity or understanding or something like that, because then we'll just end up chasing. So no adjectives, but just like time. So if you're studying, just setting aside time for it. Did I put in the time and energy on it? So yeah, really looking for objective metrics. and everybody, we're coming up on the end of time. And so we'll wrap up soon. We'll see if I can get through all the questions. Yeah, there's not too many here. Oh, EL. Yeah, thank you so much for offering to buy the books. Yeah, there's been some change of plans. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the months ahead. But thank you. Thank you for offering to buy the fiction. Yeah, we can get through all of these questions. Let us go. Let's see here. Jack. Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you, Jack. Is it? Do I still have an interest in Chinese poetry? No, I haven't. I haven't read too much Chinese poetry. Actually, I run into Chinese poetry often through on the Mental Fitness Discord server. We have a little study group focused on the Blue Cliff record, which is a Zen, a very extensive text in Zen, like Zen Buddhist philosophy from China, and there is poetry in that. So probably the extent of my Chinese poetry reading at the moment is through the Blue Cliff record. If anybody is interested in joining, so speaking of peer support and things like that, if you're interested in joining the Mental Fitness Discord server, I think it's becoming more and more important as we're seeing a lot of disruption in social media right now. And I think potentially people feeling less secure or supported on public social media, as those become platforms that are kind of political negotiation tactics and playthings. And so I think it becomes even more important that we have the Mental Fitness Discord server as a kind of a private peer support platform for exploring building mental health and fitness skills. So also that it has that approach, unlike a lot of mental illness groups online. So it's very focused on where we're going and what we're doing rather than a particular diagnosis. If you'd find that useful, just reach out on social media, like send me a DM on Instagram or send a message through my website, and just share about the things you'd like to give and support in the community. And I can give you an invite link to the Mental Fitness Discord server. EL, you said, is mindfulness about being aware of what we're doing and what's happening, including thoughts and feelings, non-judgmentally? Is discernment a skill we learn? So to the first question, yeah, like I would often describe mindfulness as doing the thing we're doing. And yeah, that non-judgmental component is part of that. That we're doing the thing we're doing rather than judging like thoughts and feelings and sounds and experiences and whatever else around us. We can just do the thing we're doing. With discernment, it depends on what you mean by discernment. But if we're having experiences non-judgmentally, I'd say part of that is seeing them as they are. And maybe that's what you were thinking of there with discernment. Mr. Mitchell 100, he said, my engine is failing and I'm trying to build a new one. Yeah, we are always building that new engine while still driving it. And he said, yeah, there's a bit of a functional gap where neither are at 100%, totally. That's always how it is. Like you're gonna throw out the old engine, so you have 0% of the old engine, and you're gonna have like 3% of the new engine. And we can often feel very stuck at that point because we're like, this car is not going anywhere. It's gonna feel really tempting to go back to the old engine. So no, that's a totally okay place to be. Scribblies said, how do you avoid checking your phone to douse anxiety when you work with technology as a job. Well, trying to douse anxiety is 1000% guaranteed to create more anxiety. So I wouldn't recommend it. Like if somebody is using their phone to get rid of anxiety, they are choosing to cause more anxiety. So if they do not like anxiety, it does not make sense to practice that compulsion. When it comes to, yeah, like I use my phone all the time now for like work. And the thing that really helps me is to just keep the focus on giving. So this switch we make, and you can see right there, like we're not trying to get rid of a feeling or get control of a feeling. Instead, what do we want to give? And so if the phone is for giving, then it's about asking, do I have something I want to share right now? Do I have something useful to share? And if I don't, then I don't need to be on it. Yeah. Oh, Paul, yay. Thank you. Thanks for being by here. And yeah, yay, you said thank you for supporting teaspoons. Absolutely. Though a teaspoon, I think, is a different thing, but also, yeah, teaspoons are important. People need teaspoons for baking and for swirling their tea. Velociraptor, thank you so much for the donation. You said thank you so much for answering all my questions today, and thank you for everything. Oh no, Velociraptor, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the donation and the continued support. It's great to see you're exploring steps into peer support and how you want to share your skills and support with others. So that's fantastic. No, thank you for being here. And there are just a couple more questions here. A1 said how to deal with existential thoughts and a feeling of detachment from questioning reality. So it can help to see that the feeling of detachment from reality is a set of compulsions. I don't know if you caught it earlier. We were talking about like the compulsions we do around trying to get some right feeling of the self. It can be the same about getting a right feeling of existence, but reality has no feeling. We can't not be in reality. So whatever the feeling is we're having, that is the feeling of reality. But if we're practicing lots of compulsions throughout our life around getting right things and feeling right, the brain is just logically going to extend that to more areas. And when it lands on existence and reality, we're going to find that distressing. But it can really help to see that practice around kind of getting and controlling right feelings is always much broader. It's going to be useful to explore doing things differently throughout life around that controlling and checking to get right feelings. The existential stuff is just built on that mountain of very normal checking and controlling right feelings. But reality simply is. It does not have a feeling. We can't be detached from reality, but we can do a lot of compulsions that make us feel detached from reality. Francisca, I have no particular, so I see you asked about EMDR and you mentioned PTSD that made OCD worsen. It could be useful to consider that we just have one brain. And so rather than seeing PTSD and OCD as these separate things and like, oh, PTSD worsened OCD, what if you looked at them together? Because with OCD, we're just trying to chase control and certainty. And if there's a difficult kind of experience, it makes sense we would look for more control and certainty in our compulsions. But I wouldn't look at that as like a separate thing making OCD worse. That is how OCD works. Yeah, so right now, if it's feeling like those are like separate, yeah, it's often the case that when we're working on cutting out compulsions, what we're going to come up against is trauma and painful past experiences. And so that's not a strange thing, or I would say like a separate um, from working on cutting out compulsions. EL, explaining more about discernment, said, yeah, I think seeing things as they are is what I meant. I think I like realizing when the story in our head is no longer compassionate or skillful, and it's time to drop it, so to speak. Yeah, that's a really useful thing to notice. All right, everybody, we've come to the end. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your experiences and your questions and your support with each other. Uh, Thank you so much to everybody that donated today as well. I really appreciate the support in, yeah, coming together as a community and from around the world so that we can talk about these skills that we're building, and we can talk about the kind of very similar shared experiences of having a human brain. Oh, Francisca, thank you so much. Yeah, I think actually, yeah, Francisco, what you said there, you said thank you for your live streams and encouraging with realistic, constructive actions to take to live again. But I think that's a great message for all of us this week. So yeah, Francisca, thank you. Like, let's all head out into our week ahead and yeah, do some like realistic, constructive actions. We don't have to be chasing some abstract concept. We can do simple actions in our lives this week that are about growing, that are about celebrating ourselves. We don't have to see ourselves as problems to fix or some like special clean experience to chase. So let's enjoy that practice. Thank you, everybody, for coming together here today and supporting the live stream and supporting yourself on the journey ahead. So we'll see you again in, I believe, 2 weeks. Thank you.